All right, Kelsey and Richard, thank you so much for sharing this time with me today. The Grants Committee thanks you. We will be reviewing KULU Track's 2 applications for ARP grants, recovery and programming application. And I'm going to let you take it away, introduce yourselves, talk about your organization, and just dive into whichever application you'd like to first. Okay.
Baby, do you want to introduce yourself first and then I'll go?
Sure. Okay, so hi, my name is Richard. I am a South African immigrant to the US. I came over to this country to join my beautiful wife after doing 16 years traveling the world as a photographer and documentary maker on cruise ships. So I've been to about 130 countries throughout the world. That was all born through the lens of while I was in South Africa, I was deeply into nature and wildlife and that side of the world. I studied a degree in nature conservation and wildlife management, and I worked as a ranger in some of the top areas of Southern Africa for wildlife. I even owned a farm for a long time in the Lowveld, right next to the Kruger National Park. So I come from a very deep kind of nature conservancy and working with tribes and working with people kind of background. And then, of course, 16 years of photography and documentary making.
Excellent.
He didn't say that, but he's also a game ranger, which means he takes people on safari.
Ooh,
which is
very cool
for me. Right?
It's one of the ways that you use the information. Yes, that's something that's been done. I would admit that it is a little bit more romantic than the actuality of waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning in an open top Jeep in negative temperatures to drive down the highway to pick up guests at 4 o'clock in the morning. There's a different side to it, I will admit. But yes, it was an incredibly amazing experience.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
The guests don't know that. They just get to hear you talking about cheetahs.
I do have a lot of very interesting stories from it. I will admit that.
I've enough to fill books, I'm sure. Novels. Yeah.
Yeah, and the traveling as well. I mean, being able to be exposed to that amount of people and that amount of perspectives is a very unique experience. And then, of course, being able to balance that off with the time that we spent in New York as well, which is a completely different set of experiences. So it feels kind of great to be unique enough to have both those kind of sets of experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course.
He's pretty cool. I like him. So my name is Kelsey Morant. I am another one of the co-creators of KULU Treks. We actually, our production manager, I was hoping he could be here today, but he had a little bit of a medical situation happen last night. So he's at the doctor today, like right during this meeting.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, me too, because I feel like you guys would have loved him. And he's such an interesting, unique aspect to this, because I'm a performer. I'm a dancer turned actor, and now we've started, our production company to make these documentaries. And he is a big Broadway guy. Like, he is a full feat. I mean, he works on major shows, not just on Broadway, but also TV, like Mandalorian and Walking Dead, and like he just has this incredible relationship with the entertainment industry. Like, he's so in it. So, yeah,
fantastic.
So our project that we're doing is that Richard and I were living in New York, and we are through hikers, which is just really long distance hiking. So we had for years kind of been cooking up this idea to like go on a through hike where we stop at the communities along the way and we just explore them. Mm-hmm. We just give people that wouldn't normally have a voice on, TV, a voice.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a really interesting aspect. People who, it's almost like TV gives people a validation that like they don't get from like, yes, I wrote a book. Like, people are like, oh, cool, you wrote a book. Wonderful. You're so awesome. Oh, I designed this show. Oh, I did that. But if you were on TV, suddenly there's a whole level of like, people are like, ooh, you must be really important.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So our idea was to do a through hike along the Continental Divide Trail and stop in along these communities, especially the Native American communities, because I don't look it, but I am Native American. And my tribe has helped me so much throughout my life. And yet I'm seeing all these other tribes that are really struggling. And it's been a really terrible thing for me to witness, because I just don't understand. I don't understand how people can treat other people like that, and how it's still happening even in like late 90s, early 2000s. I'm like, I can't believe we're still doing this. Right. So, and then, so we got this project greenlit actually before the pandemic, and we were going to go into like schools and libraries and museums. Like that's the thing that we were like, okay, we get to share this with people. And then the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And that actually helped us in some regards even more, because it was like, oh, people have something they want to talk about. They've got this like thing that's happened to the whole world, and now we've got something that everybody can like chat about. And we were one of the only people that could still do it. So, you know, so many productions got shut down because of the pandemic. Just totally like, but since our production was so unique, it was just Richard and I hiking, and then, you know, 1 to 2 videographers with us at the time. Like it was almost the safest form of production you could get.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
Just like a really small team, just like going out and technology makes you, you know, incredible visuals are achievable with a tiny amount of people. So the pandemic gave us like this new, like, oh, okay, like we got the money for this production portion of it. Like, let's just still do it. So we have all the footage for our like series, but then all the distribution people that we were going to give it to, like, started having problems. Like schools started losing staff, and libraries started losing staff, and museums just like kind of went away for a little bit. And they were like, yeah, we're not going to take that thing that we were going to buy from you. So that's what we're doing now, is we're looking for grants so that we can finish it, because we stepped back with COVID, and we were kind of like, well, how are we going to finish this? How are we going to do something about it? Like our avenue that we thought was there is gone. So how do we step back and go, okay, where are we going to go now to still get this stuff out there? Because we've got so many things in the documentary that are so humanities focused, especially with the Wind River tribe, like so humanities focused. And we just want to give them that voice so they can talk about what they want to talk about, which is mostly food sovereignty and how they're going to feed themselves. But so we pivoted, and we've kind of gone to like, how can we do national distribution? So we're talking to Nat Geo right now, but we're looking for funds to help finish the actual like project. We've got the filming all done. We just don't have the money to put it together.
Sure. Yeah. You've got all the pieces. So now tell me about what you're hoping the ultimate production to be. You said it'll be a series.
Yes. Sorry, okay. I didn't answer your question.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. That's good.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me back around. Yeah. So we're making a 10-part documentary series. So that's 10 episodes. Each episode is about 45 to 47 minutes long, you know, allowing for commercials. So, and it'll be a 10-part docuseries that covers our entire trek down the Continental Divide, and then all the communities that we see along the way are featured in each episode, along with Richard talking about, you know, with his naturalist degree, he can sit there and go, see this tree? See the way the bark looks all papery? That's because it catches on fire on purpose. Like that's what it does. That's how it survives. He can make nature fun and cool. It already is fun and cool, but explaining it in a way that's fun and cool, and have people actually be engaged and be like, oh my God, I want to go out there. I want to go see that. I want to go into those mountains of Wyoming. Like, I want to do it.
Yeah, totally.
Richard's really good at like FOMO.
Yeah.
FOMO. Like, come out here and see this.
I have to admit, I like it when my wife talks about me like this.
Richard's like, I want to be a fly on the wall for all these conversations.
I'm so glad this is being recorded.
And you will have access to it. You can watch it as many times as you want, Richard. Okay, great. And then, so you're planning, you're hoping for national distribution of some kind. Have you, and of course, in my mind, you know, I'm thinking specifically about the Wyoming piece of your journey, right? Have you talked about, considered, you know, potentially bringing those, I'm just certain it's not the whole series that covers Wyoming, but those episodes back to the Wyoming communities?
We've talked to a few. So when we decided to figure out how we can get distributed by like National Geographic and Discovery and all that, which is going well, you know, one part of our pivoting was that we got a kind of a soft promise from George Takei to be our narrator, specifically because we passed by a Japanese concentration camp, and George Takei was in a concentration camp when he was a little kid, and so we were like, oh my gosh, like this is something that people don't know. Like I passed by and I didn't even know what it was. Like concentration camp, what are you talking about? Like I didn't know that we imprisoned Japanese people during World War II. Like what? So because George Takei has his own personal campaign to spread awareness about that, and we passed right by one, we were like, oh my gosh, we can get George, like, let's ask George Takei. And he's given us like, yes, as soon as you get distribution, I will sign on to be your narrator. So, but when we decided to do that pivot, it was because museums in Wyoming and places like that just they couldn't give us any answer about how we might be a part of their programs.
Sure.
They just couldn't. They were lacking staff, they were lacking money. They were just at this point where they were like, we're scrambling, we're not taking on anything new. So when we had decided to go this route for Nat Geo and Discovery and all those, National Geographic's been the one that's come back and they're the most interested, which I'm very happy about that. There was a point to what I was talking about, and I can't remember what you asked me.
We were talking about taking those episodes about Wyoming maybe back into those communities for presentations and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Like, why did I tangent off this?
You got it.
So we haven't gone back to specific Wyoming, but we've talked to some people in Montana and some people in New Mexico. We could probably reach out to Wyoming, like PBS or something like that. I have not done.
So one of the things that is going to happen though is once this is aired and everything, the original footage of all of the work that we did in Wyoming is going to the Wind River trial so that they can use it for whatever purposes they need to, for additional media and additional places that they want to use it. They're quite interested in what they can be able to do with this in order to be able to raise awareness into some of their rights. And once it's kind of been out onto air, to give it the validity, they want to use the footage as well for their ongoing legal battles or what way they need to use that formation. So it won't just be the footage that airs, they will get all the background information and so on as well to utilize.
Well, that's great. That's really, really helpful. And I assume that that on your journey, you worked with both tribes, the Eastern Shoshone and the Northern Arapaho. Is that true? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Great. And so they'll both have access to that information. Awesome. Great. Yeah, that's wonderful. I do encourage you to check in with PBS, Wyoming PBS. I know that they'd sure love to talk about this, I'm sure. Great, excellent. And so then for the funding purposes of what you're asking for from Wyoming Humanities, specifically this $5,000, what piece of the post-production distribution are you hoping to support with this $5,000?
Totally. So we're hoping to support basically, we've been talking to a lot of people about how do we get this out, right? Like we're trying to do something great here. We're trying to give people a voice, on a platform so that people will actually take them seriously. And what we have heard over and over and over is you need crowd validation. You need crowd validation. You need people, you need eyeballs kind of already on it, so that somebody who wants to air it says, okay, you already have an audience who will come along with you. We won't have to do all this work. So we were already doing some like live events and things, some community engagement. And it's been really wonderful. And it's been a lot of fun for us because, you learn as much as for all that you're trying to promote these other people teaching things, you're also learning at the same time. So it's so interesting to see what like communities are like Native Americans in like near the southern border and like so many things, so many naturalist things, and so much information that is like fun for the public. So we've started these live events and we realized that we really need a podcast. We need to get a dedicated audience for our specific causes. And then that way, like when we can show that, yes, we have dedicated people, we have eyeballs on this who want to know more, then networks can be like, okay, yes, you have crowd validation.
Gotcha.
So I can't tell if Richard, you look like you were going to say something, but I couldn't tell.
Oh, look, I always have plenty to say if you'll let me.
Want to talk about the live events at all?
So one of the things that we wanted to put forward here was we've just gone through a series, and we're working quite closely with some of the people on the southern border. And we've done a series of discussions about the Indigenous rights and the southern border and how people are perceiving it and the wall and all of that. And we've had some very interesting people be able to come on board, some top A-list people, as well as scientists and so on from the southern border. And one of the areas we want to focus on again is to focus on the area of Wyoming. So because we hiked down each one, and a fair bit of the budget would be to sort out and get our podcasts set up with guests from Wyoming.
Sure. Okay. Okay, great. So, okay. So this is just for my own clarification. So the $5,000 would be used as this I don't want to say tangential, but this additional piece of the project that will help, like you said, create that public validation that will help ultimately in distribution.
Yeah. So it wasn't something that was really in the original kind of budget for what we're doing, but we found to the point where it would be so advantageous to be able to have that.
Yeah.
Now we've had to kind of crowdsource the funding to get it going, because we've spent all of the other side in getting it to this far. So now it's kind of a case of, thank you, COVID, for getting us here, but not allowing us to kind of cross the border and able to recover with something like this, and just give us that little extra boost to be able to cross the line and bring eyeballs to these projects that we're so passionate about.
Sure. Fantastic. Okay, great. And so then, so excellent. So the programming grant would be to help fund this podcast, which I love. I think that's great. It would be widely accessible, right? It would, I'm guessing, would be on free platforms, right, for anyone to access. Okay, great. And it would be a discussion, a conversation, talking about your journey, right? Yeah. Great.
Well, that's the idea, yes.
Yeah, aspects of the journey. We're really interested in using our production manager's connections to get more A-lister type people. But then we also want to be able to speak to the people from the Wind River tribe. We have a really great liaison with them. Her name is Gail Woodsum. And she's been invaluable. She has the trust of people that are usually not very trusting, probably because in the past they've not been treated well at all. And so when we were on the Wind River Reservation, you could tell initially they didn't want to speak to us. They didn't want to talk to outsiders. Like, I could tell them, oh, it's okay, I'm Chickasaw, but like, they don't care. Like, I'm still an outsider. Like, I still know their problems. I'm still not dealing with their issues. So she was somebody that could come in and say, no, guys, seriously, like, if you want to further your goals, help these people help you.
Sure, totally.
And so because go ahead, Dave.
Sorry to say that one of the most rewarding things there was, because of how quickly we had to get this thing going, we didn't have the opportunity to research the stories that were in the Wind River before we got there.
Sure.
It turned out to be the greatest blessing in the world, because we got to get into these meetings with people that wanted to tell us stories, and all we could sit down and say to them was, what's your story? Let us know what story you want us to tell, rather than us getting here and going, tell us about this. It was amazing to watch after about 10, 15 minutes of us sitting there and just listening to what they wanted to say, the depths, the levels of what the conversations came to and how they opened up with those conversations, just went to them with a state of, please tell us your story rather than try and dictate the story that we wanted told. That was a very fulfilling experience from capturing those.
Yeah, and it based on what Kelsey has told me, it sounds like you really have found this solid theme
Oh, yeah.
of food sovereignty.
Very much so. Food and water.
Yes. Oh, water is a huge issue. Yep.
Exactly. As climate change is making these changes, and this is why Kelsey said if she lets the flood water open, I will waffle here for hours. So let
Like
me
I don't know why
I'll curtail that a bit. But yes, with all of those functions that are happening at the moment, we were able to kind of draw a line through them and how they connect, and not just on a physical point of here they connect by the line on the map, but how food sovereignty is a problem in the southern border and it's a problem in Wyoming. These are issues that are coming with climate change that are nationwide and then highly specific to small areas that are not really seen.
Sure.
I mean, mental divide in Wyoming and the water source that provides for the rest of the country, it's hardly anybody knows about it. And here it is, part of the backbone of how this entire country runs, and it's supported by a people who are there to take care of it. And now they can't. You know what I mean? There's something in that, and there's something in bringing those kind of stories out. And these people can't even feed themselves because of the lack of. Yeah, sorry, I will.
I completely understand your passion, Richard. I really do. Trust me, I'm originally from Riverton.
Oh yeah.
So I like to think that I'm pretty familiar with some of a lot of the conditions there. Yeah.
I mean, it's very.
Yeah, just the political, social, economic, dynamics are very, very.
And it's very strange for me to have come from South Africa and to see it. I mean,
sure.
Put the political side in it. I mean, you look at the history of where I come from, and I've always been liberal. All the way through the history of where I grew up. But I grew up in the 80s in South Africa. Exactly. So I was a white liberal in those time periods, which was a really, really strange time period for that. But then to come over here and see very similar things kind of happening and going, wait a minute, what's going on here? You guys jump up and down about that. And then these kind of issues are coming up here where people can't even feed themselves. And being able to spark a light on that and being able to bring that story out to a public that needs to be aware of it. I mean, we met with one of the I think it was the CEO of the First Nation, and he said something that it was Mike, right? The First Nation, Kels?
I think it's Joe.
Anyway, so he said to me, he said natives are an invisible problem. You know, native relations, it's something that comes and goes with fashion. Like at the beginning of COVID, there was that piece that went out about the Navajo and what happened in the Navajo Nation with COVID. And people were interested for about 2 months. And then where's the interest gone? So to be able to put a point on these issues and make it more than just a single communication that spikes interest and disappears. So for us, the podcast is not just a way to support what we're doing with the documentary. It's a way for us to keep that attention without it disappearing after a brief time, and continue those communications and continue to bring those stories out of the people that want to tell them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's very, thank you. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I feel like I've learned so much more about, number one, the goals of the project, you know, how it came together, your time there, but also, you know, what you ultimately hope will come from this. And I think that is really great. I mean, you can only fit so much in 2,000 characters, right? So this is really, really helpful. I don't think I have any questions about the programming application. Any others? I understand that Gail Woodsum is serving as your humanities expert. Which,
helping us. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, please, Kelsey. Talk about Gail. Yeah.
Well, I first of all love her. Yeah. Amazing woman. Yeah. Like just the incredible things that she's managed to accomplish, and what a fighter for other people's rights. Like, wow. I'm really excited to have her on, just because then I think that we'll have a better opportunity to have people from the reservation come onto the podcast and say, no, for real, talk about it. We want to hear, we want to know, like, tell us what you want to tell us. Like, let's have a conversation. And having her to break the ice, because even still, like, even when we interviewed a lot of people from the reservation, but one of the people that we had probably the most comprehensive interview with was an elder named Cy Lee, and he's kind of a liaison between the Wind River government and, like, you know, the US government. He's kind of in that area and deciphering and translating, like, what they need and how we work together. And I can't tell you how different it was speaking to him and hearing his story after having Gail speak to him for us, than it would have been if we just rocked up and said, hey, can we talk to you? Like, totally. I'm really happy to have her on board to help liaison between our podcast and the reservation. Sure. Like, it's one thing to go on for, you know, to be there in person and be like, hi, we're here. But as soon as we leave, I don't know if that trust factor goes away. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just put something in here to put in? But one of the things we want to make sure we do, and this is one of the reasons we've been fighting so hard about this, is we don't want to have been there and have spouted and promised and taken this and give up on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We want to back our word. We want so badly to fulfill the promises that we have done to help highlight these people.
Sure.
That passion to make sure that we fulfill on that, that's why we keep fighting and keep pushing to get this thing done.
Yeah. And I love that you're getting creative about how you can do that by adding this podcast element. I think that's really fascinating. I think that's really interesting, super engaging. I know that if I were to listen to a podcast and then there's a series that comes out, I'm totally going to watch that, right? That's a great idea. I think that's great.
Then also what's also more interesting for that, for the long-term availability to give back to these communities that we've come from, the other way around is true, where, just watch this amazing series, let's go and listen to the podcast too.
Totally.
A way to be able to reinvigorate the story and allow people to connect with the story and not just what happened with the story now, but what's the story with the Wind River going to be in 3 years' time?
Sure.
The podcast allows for that to be continued rather than us being someone else who helps them be an invisible project.
Totally. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Do you have anything else to add about your programming application specifically, or can we switch gears to the recovery?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else you want to.
It feels very robust to me. I'll just say that. I feel very informed.
Like unloaded on you. So.
No, that's the whole point of this. This is great. That's the whole point of this conversation. So, yeah.
There's one thing reading people's passion and reading what they want to do, and there's a completely different thing seeing that people are actually here to deliver on what they say and are passionate enough to push through it. You can't get that from a piece of paper.
That's right. That is absolutely right. Okay.
So, great. Onto the recovery.
Yeah, onto the recovery. Let's talk about it.
Recovery has a lot of crossover with the programming grant. And
sure.
Essentially for us, COVID hit our production really hard because we had an avenue when we got greenlit. We got the money for the actual production part of it, right? And then we thought we had a clear avenue to distribution. And then suddenly when COVID happened and a few months into it, people were like, yeah, that pathway's not, that's not here anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it really affected us in our ability to take the project forward ourselves because suddenly our investment went away. Like, so it's just been us trying to figure out how we're going to pay our own bills and keep this going forward. And the recovery grant would just help that so much in establishing how we will take it forward.
Okay.
So that's why it's similar to the programming grant, because it's the same kind of avenue. We figured out that this podcast is a good way for us to move forward. Like even though we have a call to action at the end of each episode, no, we didn't want to be a documentary like all the documentaries I grew up watching, which are like, the earth is dying, climate change is coming, and everybody's going to die. And then they just leave. And you're like, I have all this new information. What do I do with it? I'm just a person.
Totally. Yeah. What can a person do? I get it.
What can one girl do? Sitting here alone in her living room, being upset that the world is ending. Right.
Yeah.
So we wanted to give people, like, when we give this, especially when it's information that is kind of like, what would you call that? Something that just makes people like, inside. Like when you learn that like the polar ice caps are melting and like, you want to do something, but if you don't know how, it's this like strange energy. We didn't want them to have that, negative, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to. So we've said, okay, at the end of each episode, we're going to say, if you would like to donate via cash, you can donate here. You can go to this place and you can, these causes, or if you'd like to donate via volunteer, you can do this, or if you can only spread awareness, do this. Like, we wanted to give people an actual call to action so they wouldn't be left with that feeling of like, information is negative and I want to help, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
So the recovery aspect of this would be that the podcast helps with that. It helps not just with the series when you see it and going, oh, there's a call to action, I can do something, but it helps establish a relationship with these people. They're coming on continuously in real time and you get to listen to them in a podcast. So that is a big part of our recovery going forward. It's just like, how can we use this to essentially lift our project back up into being something viable?
Sure.
I'd just like to add here that not just are we trying to raise awareness, but as we raise awareness and raise eyeballs, we're also funneling that into funds collections to go and help the communities along the trail that we enacted with. But not only is it eyeballs that we're putting into this, as those eyeballs grow, it funnels into a donation platform that then puts some actual money back into the areas that we were able to get these stories from.
And so then specifically the use of these recovery funds, would that be directly tied to the planning aspect of getting this podcast going? Sorry, Richard, go ahead.
No. This is a Kelsey one, not a Richard one.
So podcast, basically a podcast takes a lot of time beforehand to research. You want to know what, you want to know the right questions to ask. You want to research a little bit about the person, because the last thing you want to do is get on and accidentally offend somebody because you haven't done correct research. And then you're like, oh, sorry. It's not helpful for the discussion going forward. So what we've figured out is that for each episode to interview somebody is going to take, depending on how prominent the person is, 6 to 11 hours of research time.
Sure.
And that's 6 to 11 hours that we then don't get to spend working on the distribution, that we then don't get to spend making other money in other areas. So being able to pay whoever is on the team is researching at the times that we have the best podcast possible, that's where those funds would go.
Great.
We wouldn't be spending time going, how are we gonna pay rent?
Yeah.
We'll also research this person that we are interviewing in 2 days.
Yeah. So yes, so funds would be they'd be used for all of the I guess the pre-production of the podcast. Yeah. So the planning aspect of getting this information out and in an ethical, responsible way.
Correct. Yeah. We'd also, if there's money left, like after we have a certain amount of money allotted per episode. If there's money left, we'd like to pay people, especially people from the Wind River. We'd love to go, hey, here's a podcast. Here's $100 for your time. Like, please just give us your story and tell us what you would like to tell us. Like, that would be in an ideal world, the most wonderful thing that I think we could do is not just have the recovery funds for the podcast production, but also be able to pay people to come on to say like, yes, we value your time and your stories.
It's actually very strange. I was working working with a marketing company, and they were doing interviews that were talking about sustainability. And I was speaking to the head of them, and they were offering to pay for the interview and it be on a subject that the person would be interested in. They were battling to get even a 20% positive response, and they were paying them substantially. So it's having that little bit of money to help people with the initiative to come on, it does make a difference.
Of course. Yeah, I can imagine.
Especially for people who are working for their own time. How do you say to someone, okay, I need you to take 3 hours out of your day, in the middle of your day, which is the live time for an audience, and pull you away from your job, which is earning you income, and you're earning low wages in that case as well. How do you say to that person, here, come in and spend that time and lose that money to kind of a conversation with us?
Totally.
That does balance out quite interestingly.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you thinking about that. That's always something that we like our people to consider. Is compensating people that help their project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's been the ethos of this the whole way through. I mean, even if you see our mission video has said from the beginning, we want to give back. I mean, we got this incredible story. We got it. We were there. We've got the footage. It's in the hard drive right over there. We got given this incredible gift of these stories.
Yeah.
So now it's our job to do the work to give back the awareness that we promised.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautifully articulated. Thank you. Okay, great. So I don't think I have. I'm just reviewing my notes and everything. I don't believe that I have any other questions related to the recovery grant, but I'd of course look to you to encourage you to offer any last words about either application, really, or anything that you directly want to let the committee know that you haven't already said.
Gosh.
I know, big, yeah, on the spot. I know, it's terrible. Why do I do this to people?
All I can think of is Kelsey and I started our hiking experience of Wyoming. It doesn't mean we've finished it yet. The mountains in Wyoming are some of the beautiful places we have seen, and being able to walk through those mountains with the snow caps on them and the memories that will give me for the rest of my life, I cannot stress enough how much that feeling of Wyoming and that love for those views and so on left an impact on me.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you to say, especially with all of your worldly experience.
It's a beautiful place.
Those of us that are from here, born and raised, and don't have any plans to leave, completely understand what you're talking about.
Oh yeah. I'm the one that's jealous.
And Kelsey, anything you'd like to say?
I guess I could just piggyback off what my husband said. Like, I don't know. I just loved everything about being in those. Can I tell you, like, I had heard of Jackson Hole when we, because that's where we originally landed, our first town stop when we started actually going through in Montana, and I just had no idea such stunning places could just exist. I was like, oh, this is like the most beautiful town I have ever seen. Ever. All you people live in this stunning glory. Okay, fine. Just be amazing.
Yeah, it's true. It's totally true. Well, thank you both so much. Not only for the time you took putting these applications together. Kelsey, thank you so much for reaching out to me ahead of time. I'm really glad that we had a time to connect before you submitted, and now after. Thank you for spending this time with us. We're just,
I want to apologize for the rambling diatribes that you guys will sort through. I'm really sorry.
they love it. you know, they're all humanities folks, you know, that's what we live for, the stories, right? So this is great. It's just great. So thank you both so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.